Hello, today let's talk about really interesting piece of gear because it's freshly announced and it's super promising in terms of specifications, and also it has a really pleasant price. It's FiiO's new, more high-end desktop digital to analog converter named K7. So they have actually in their lineup pretty decent K5 Pro, they have really good K9 Pro, and they decided to release some device in between, like K7 suggests. But at the same time, they decided to lower the price as much as possible, reducing their profits from this. So this tiny, actually not tiny, it's not tiny at all, this desktop amplifier costs $200, which is really good for the device that uses XMOS chip for the USB interface and AK4493 as a digital to analog converters, two of them if I remember right. And also they use the THX AAA amplifiers that they used in many previous devices successfully. So it doesn't have any Bluetooth connectivity, but it has a nice set of different inputs, outputs. It has balanced amplifier that delivers up to 2000 milliwatts or just 2 watts for 32 ohms load and more than 500 milliwatts for the 300 ohm load. So tons of driving power, and as you can see it's really promising. So let's have a closer look. Package is traditional, still like this consistency, without much information on the outside. And also traditionally inside buyers will get additional internal box. I want to open it as carefully as possible. So there is a special cut to pull out first tray with device itself. So let me put it back to the table. And second box with power supply unit. There is some manual, warranty card and so on, but of course main object of interest is the device itself. So here it is, and here inside we'll get a really expectable set of accessories. So external power supply unit with European plug, but of course you'll get the version for your country. Also USB cable to connect it and 6.3mm adapter. Basically all things that you need to make it up and running. And actually, if you're interested in the experiments, FiiO recently released the power supply for the M17, for the K7, and it should also work with this device too, so you can get more audiophilic power. But of course, in this review we'll focus on the stock power supply unit. In terms of design, it's pretty much reminding FiiO K5 Pro, but nothing like super fancy in terms of design, but at the same time it's really solidly built, looks strict and pretty attractive. So it's made of metal, feels not super heavy, but thanks to this rubber fits, it stays on the table pretty reliably. Chances to accidentally pull it by headphones cord are pretty low. All controls, actually you can see it's small in terms of size, but at the same time pretty powerful, so it's good for those who want to save some space on the table. All controls are located on the front and back panel. So here we've got power input, USB input, optical and coaxial input, and also there are line in and line out, so you can get any option of working. You can use it as pure digital to analog converter, you can use it as amplifier, you can use it as a full digital to analog converter and amplifier combo. So everything is up to you. On the front panel there is input toggle button, gain toggle, 2 levels, and you can select output. So phones out, preamplifier and line out. So these two modes are about the same. The difference is that will volume control be included or not. Also on the front panel there is a volume knob. Let me plug the power. Also it works as a on-off switch. So you rotate it, it clicks, and device starts booting up. As you can see, there is a circular light around it, multicolored, so FiiO even utilized this rainbow effect here. Looks pretty attractive, and the color depends on the type and resolution of the signal you are using. Here I used the hybrid hybrid volume regulator, typical for FiiO previous models. So it's a potentiometer, but it's not affecting the volume itself. This resistance of this potentiometer is read by analog to digital converter, and then they use that value to command the special volume control chip that does regulation. It allows you to get perfect channel balance and no issues when regulating volume, like some noises, scratches and so on. Knob is pretty smooth, really pleasant to rotate, and thanks to this smoothness it's pretty easy to find some volumes that will suit your needs. Also scale here is linear, so like at the end of the scale you'll get rapid growth of volume, but it's kind of typical in the amplification world, because a lot of people would like to use it with sensitive earphones, and that means that they need more space for controlling volume at the beginning with super sensitive models. Also, as you can see, here are LED indicators that shows you USB, optical, coaxial and line input. And also there are two outputs, balanced and regular one, 6.3mm and pentacon. And I kinda like that everyone on FiiO now discussing the issues with volume control that were for the Chinese versions. And FiiO recalled that models to make adjustments, but it didn't affect all international sales. But everyone is like asking what it was and what to do. Is my unit affected? But FiiO clearly stated that only mainland China units were affected. And as I see, a lot of companies use mainland China as a first proving ground to test their products, and that makes sense because it's easier to recall products when you are in the same country. So to summarize everything in terms of design and presentation and build quality, device is pretty solid and full of inputs, outputs, and really comfortable in everyday usage. And of course about the sound. I didn't want to do that actually, but I built this improvised setup with FiiO K7, some 6.3mm adapter, made the lyrics as headphones for illustration. Actually they're not super power hungry, but as many planar magnetic headphones, they benefit from more powerful source. Then ugly USB Type-C adapter and M17 as a digital transport. Of course, using M17 as digital transport in this setup makes zero sense, because it sounds better than K7, but I just wanted to do something a bit ridiculous. And anyway, as a digital transport, it also works really well. And in general, you know, looks like FiiO found their sound. I see that consistency in recent models like recent M11 plus version, also M17, Q7, K9 Pro and K7 II. Of course, I'm not saying that they are similar in terms of sound, but general representation is kind of done in same style, because basic idea is to make them natural, make them pretty technical and at the same time not to overdo the focus on the micro contrast, so not make them sound analytical or super monitoring. And at the same time also add a bit of dynamics and emotions, and that's really benefit from the overall perception of the music with these devices. And actually, as I've already said, despite being priced closer to K5 in terms of sound, K7 is closer to K9, and you can consider it as like 3/4 of K9. Of course, this number is totally fictional, just to illustrate the idea, because it's impossible to measure sound quality in some numbers. But anyway, let's go back to the sound. Bass is deep, it goes to the maximum depth, it's controlled well, and at the same time, of course, it's not emphasized in terms of quantity. But there is a hint of additional tightness, so bass sounds like impactful and authoritative, like really present with good punch and kick. But at the same time, thanks to the good detalization, you'll get a good amount of overtones. But at the same time, overtones won't be highlighted, so it's kind of more natural type of representation. But of course, with some good recorded stuff, you'll get really good amount of realism and so on. Because of that added tightness, maybe someone can perceive as accented low frequencies, but in practice, in terms of quantity, of course, it's not boosted. But you can select headphones that will benefit for that. And it sounds really good both with some natural instruments and with electronic music, just a matter of finding proper headphones or earphones. And the first example, it's Deep Purple, Smoke on the Water. And yeah, this adapter is really bad, so sorry, I will disconnect it, because it's really bad, it's keeping attaching and detaching, and because of that FiiO Music and USB Audio Player Pro fights for the access to the device. So I just showed that it's worked, and probably it's a good demonstration. But if you don't believe me, let's connect it, hold steady. No FiiO Music, I don't like you today. I like USB Audio Player Pro, and let me move the microphone. So you can see that it's working, and hopefully this small piece won't give me YouTube strike. And let's go back to the review. I need to get a better adapter. So first example, it's Smoke on the Water, live version by Deep Purple. Really good bass guitar appears after the during the development of the theme. Actually, no sense to describe this track, everyone heard it. Live version sounds even more engaging, and thanks to the good performance of this amplifier, bass line delivers really well. And another typical example, Musica Nuda on Vecchio Errore. Probably I pronounced it wrong. I kind of suspect that it should be translated by like bigger error, but also here I could be wrong too. If someone speaks Italian, please correct me. Anyway, it's all about double bass and vocal and the great contrast they give, and this digital tonal converter delivers it really good. Of course, compared to, let's say, K9 Pro, overtone saturation is a bit poorer, but for $200 it's just a great performance without any buts. And the mid frequencies are on the natural side of things, without any attempts to highlight something or to add, but if record is done properly and if dynamics is present, this device represents it really well. It's like really good macro dynamics, nice resolution, but without overdoing the micro contrast, great emotions representation, and overall pretty enjoyable sound, like natural but at the same time enjoyable, especially with better quality records. And actually that's the reason to try to find some better records for this little guy. And the imaginary stage is really wide, not huge but pretty realistic, good in depth, but width is slightly bigger than depth, but depth layering is also done on a really nice level. And first example, it's Jethro Tull, Cross-Eyed Mary, and that flute in the beginning, guitar part, vocal, everything sounds engaging and lively thanks to the dynamics of the digital tonal converter. And second example, let's pay our tribute, let's show our respect to recently passed vocalist of the Nazareth, and use this Fly Tonight as a good example for this digital tonal converter. Of course, it's not audiophilic record and it never intended to be that, but Nazareth is like the key signature feature for me. It's that forwardness. They overwhelming you with emotions, with actually it's not aggression, but because like we've got brutal death metal and other stuff like that, but at the same time emotions and forwardness of this of their tracks is really great, and it's pretty enjoyable in many cases. And of course, thanks to the boosted dynamics here, this Fly Tonight sounds really great. And in terms of treble, actually it's the most noticeable drawback compared to K9 Pro, because it lacks layering compared to K9 Pro, but at least basic treble layering is present here. And it's really good if you have some decent in-ear monitors, for example, and you want to get at least basic layering. And at the same time, treble is natural, with good extension, with proper attacks and decays, controlled well, and gives a good amount of overtones, not super saturated, but at the same time really decent. And because of that it sounds pretty realistic and pretty airy with all that necessary nuances. And example for the treble, first one is Sigurður Rögnvaldsson Dark Forest. Like if I speak it faster, no one notice my mistakes, because honestly not sure about pronunciation of that letters with diacritics, but it's a really interesting project that hardly fit any genre. Usually that called something like avant-garde jazz, because like it's pretty rich with improvisations, but at the same time it's not classical jazz, so let's label that avant-garde jazz. And like we put into this subgenre everything that's hard to qualify. If it's not metal or like some strange pop music or something like that, so everything else will be avant-garde jazz. But this is a really interesting project with a lot of usage of percussions, guitars that goes to the treble area and gives nice sense of saturation, and this digital tonal converter with amplifier delivers that really well. And the second example, it's also Niechęć. I like this group. They are also jazz, pretty avant-garde, but not like, they are closer to traditional jazz. And Relaks Dub is just interesting track. It also has a really great saturated low frequencies, but at the same time also they have a lot of things goes to the middle and the treble area, and this digital tonal converter represented also pretty well. Speaking about the load, actually the device is kind of universal. It performs nice with sensitive in-ear monitors. On the low gain, actually background noise is really low, especially if you're not using some super sensitive in-ear monitors. And on the high gain, they are capable to drive like vast majority of headphones, even pretty power hungry ones. But the main question, of course, is that with some high-end tough to drive planars, you probably need like K9, because it will show you better it will give better treble, and it's actually better match in terms of level for the high-end headphones. But in general, like high impedance models and basically everything, it drives in terms of power really well. And speaking about the comparisons, to be honest, don't remember a lot of models in this price segment. I've tested some topping and SMSL, but actually this device performs better with more dynamics and more realism, more enjoyment. Noticeable step compared to the regular K5 Pro. I'm not sure will FiiO discontinue it or just lower the price. It's up to their decision. But noticeable step back in terms of performance, in terms of dynamics and control. In general, I think FiiO could safely set the price tag about $300 or $350, but they decided to sell it for $200, and it's a great offer, especially if you want like good sound quality and not that audiophiliac stuff with super expensive gear, trying to find proper I don't know, USB cables and stuff like that. So it's a really good, like, not for common people, but for those who like good quality but don't want to go that uncanny valley of audiophilia. Thank you for listening, thank you for your attention, and of course have a great day.